Welcome. I'm joined again this week by CivilNet host and analyst Eric Hacopian from the United States to talk about some of the developing news stories in Armenia this week. So, Eric, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be with you again.
When it comes to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, recently he stated that there is nothing to negotiate. He has also said that Azerbaijan is ready for a peace treaty, but Armenia is not. We saw yesterday's events where units of the Azerbaijani army fired on multiple positions along the state border, resulting in 3 Armenian servicemen dying. So what exactly is his game? What is he trying to accomplish, in your opinion?
Well, I think if you look at that interview that he had from a few days ago, it sort of gives away everything that are what their game plan is and where these provocations and these attacks and these invasions come from. I think what he wants is he wants us to settle, and he forces us to concede things about Artsakh that we're not ready to concede, some things that no Armenian government can ever concede. And I think since this is their greatest moment of advantage and our greatest moment of weakness, he wants to impose his will on us, which is something that we need to resist. But I think we need to see this in a broader context, because he is sort of trapped in this triangle, somewhat of his own making. This triangle has 3 different issues, 3 edges. One of them is what he has promised his people and what he's been telling his people, which is this issue has been solved and that there's nothing to talk about. And this issue that, there's nothing to discuss, we won, and that's that. The problem with that is there's an 800-pound gorilla in the room, and it's called that Artsakh still exists. Armenians live there. There's an Artsakh Republic, and it's become the largest Russian base in the South Caucasus. And at some point, he has to explain to his people that he knows as well as anybody else that when the Russians come to an area, they normally don't leave. And the Russians are here to stay in a territory that he claims, and there's very little that he can do about it. So on the one hand, it's it's the realities of the ground that he's denying. The second pole of this triangle is the fact that the international community, in this case, the France, Russia, and the United States, have been very clear that this issue is not solved. And more importantly, the OSCE is the forum to solve it. That peace agreement, or the ceasefire agreement on November 9th, was not the final say-all of what things that need to be settled in the region. And this puts him in direct contradiction with all the great powers, something that was sort of a reverse of where we were at, in which the entire world was telling us to give up the liberated occupied territories continually, and they were essentially riding that on our back for 25 years. The third pole is the contradiction between what his people have desired, and what his society demands, which is essentially the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. Given the sort of the sick level of hatred that the Armenophobia that's been built into that society over the last many years. So he's sort of he's as prominent, and given the fact that ethnic cleansing is frankly not something that's going to is likely to happen or will be allowed to happen in the current political context. And, we have to go back to the night of November 9th. People forget how close we were to having complete ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. It was a matter of days, if the war had not stopped, that could have happened. With the Turkish and the Azeri forces could have essentially wiped away the last vestiges of Armenians living in Artsakh after 3,000 years. So we came very close to that. Something made him stop that night. He was either pressure or he was threatened. By who? Most likely the Russians, whoever. We'll never know the details. But he, I think, in even the back of his mind, understands that a complete ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Artsakh is not politically feasible in today's world. So he is caught in between these triangles, and wherever all of these 3 triangles are negatives for him. He can't ask the Russians to leave, and he can't take them on. He knows that. He's not going to be able to talk the major powers out of the OSCE forum. And ethnic cleansing in the long run is unacceptable. So he is stuck in this trap. And the only way out of this trap is to be able to force something down our throats that that we will not accept. And I think, let's go back to the OSCE. Part of the issue of the OSCE is he knows any negotiations with the OSCE are negatives for him and positives for us, because the OSCE process up until the war was about what the Armenians are supposed to give back. Well, there's nothing more for the Armenian side to give back. In fact, it's our territories that are occupied now, whether it's Hadrut, other places in Artsakh or Shushi. So he obviously doesn't want that conversation. So anything that pushes towards the OSCE process is a positive for us, because any conversation at this point is not about what we give up, it's about what we gain. So I think it's important for us, as difficult as it is to hold our own and to resist and not to capitulate and not to concede anything, given the fact that, as a practical matter, the world is on our side.
The economy minister, Vahan Hacopian, has been stating that there is good economic news as of late in Armenia in terms of employment, in terms of investment, in terms of tax revenue. But recently he said in an article that there are labor shortages in Armenia. And some people were making fun of him for that. So what do you think he meant?
Well, I mean, technically he's not wrong. There are labor shortages. In Armenia, you have a situation which isn't frankly that uncommon around the world, in which you have unemployment, you have a demand for labor, for qualified labor, and then you have unemployment all at the same time because people don't have the skill sets for the jobs that are available in the market. I think what he's really referring to is that really used to be the case on the higher end, on the better educated end, whether it's programmer or physicists or people who are involved in much better paying professions. But what we have seen over the last couple of months, or actually in fact over the last couple of years, is that the fact there's a labor shortage on the lower end of the market, on jobs that are quote unquote have less skills. So there is a labor shortage. While at the same time, there are people who, don't have the employment that they have. I think it's fair to say that in today's Armenia, especially in big cities, if you really want a job, you will have one, with the proviso that it might not be the job that you want. Secondly, I think there's an issue of pay. Whenever you have a labor shortage, eventually that leads to higher wages, because that's the one way to attract people. And then in Armenia, you have this very unique case of what they call a reserve wage, which is there's so many people who live off of remittances from families that it's not worth it for them to go take a $200 a month job when someone is sending them $400 a month from Russia. But I think he's technically correct about a labor shortage. But that doesn't mean that there are people in Armenia who want to work and are in the professions that they want, or more importantly, are getting paid on the level that they want. Because there's plenty of jobs, but it doesn't mean that they pay a living wage, in the sense that people are expecting a certain level of lifestyle.
In Iran, the vaccination rates are extremely low. This has resulted in thousands of Iranians crossing the border into Armenia to get vaccinated. The Armenian government has said that those who happen to be in Armenia as tourists, for example, can be vaccinated for free. So do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it's a bad thing that a good thing is coming out of it. I think obviously the Iranians that are coming to Armenia to get vaccinated are coming there because of this really cruel sanctions policy that is not allowing people in that country to get the vaccines that they need to fight COVID. I also think it speaks very highly of Armenian society in the country. And I think this is probably the only case in the world where foreigners are allowed to come in and get vaccinated. So I think in this country that is, it's having this border issues on a daily basis, is being attacked by unfriendly neighbors, is still generous enough to go out there and allow a group of people that are under sanction to come to Armenia and get vaccinated to essentially save their lives. I think it speaks highly of our culture and our society. As a corollary to this, which is, I think, quite interesting, is the fact that probably a quarter to a third of these people, Iranians that are coming to Armenia to get vaccinated, are actually Azeris from Iran. You actually can stand in line and you can hear them speak Azeri, which I think it's good. People should be able to come and speak Azeri freely in the streets of Yerevan. Unfortunately, the same is not the case the other way around. I cannot imagine a scenario in which Armenians from Iran will ever go to Baku to get vaccinated, or be able to speak their language freely in the streets of Baku without being lynched. This tells us about the juxtaposition between the kinds of societies that we have, and how humane and democratic states act, and how neo-fascist states act. And I think to the extent that people are coming and they're being welcomed out of a really horrible situation, I think it's a good thing, and I think we should take a lot of credit for it. And frankly, it should become an example for the rest of the world. And then at a time where all the great powers are hoarding vaccines, we're actually willing to share it.
And the political arena of Armenia has been rather quiet as of late. Parliament is not in session, but even the Prime Minister has been calling for all sides to bring the temperature down. Do you think all the sides will do this, or do you think once Parliament gets back into the flow, things will go back to the way it was around the election?
It's hard to say. I think there's a few factors here. I think part of the whenever you leave an election cycle, things calm down, is because you don't have that heated competition for votes, and you try to position yourself here and you position yourself there. Hopefully, it means that we have a political process that is far more constructive, in the sense that instead of yelling at each other or calling each other names, you can actually sit down and try to come up with solutions to the country's problems, the serious problems that the country has. But I suspect there's also an element of capitulation, frankly, on the side of the side that lost the election, given the way the elections worked out, where they expected a far better result. And when you're expecting a better result and you don't get it, sort of everybody pulls back to regroup to see what the next step should be, of how they should proceed, or to the extent that they should even proceed. And as we noticed, the former president himself said he's not going to take his seat. So I think this is more of a waiting period before the fireworks begin again, as the political system or parliament meets again. But I think even if we're getting a more civilized, peaceful political process, simply because people are exhausted, or we just went through an election, that's a good thing. Hopefully, it allows people to sit back and focus on the things that really need to be focused on, rather than calling each other names and creating this black and white imaginary world that has nothing to do with reality.
Well, Eric, that was very insightful. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
And continue following CivilNet.